Hey, everybody. On today's episode of the Founder University podcast, we've got a great talk on vendor risk management. Now, what is vendor risk management? It's the process of doing diligence on third-party vendors, so anyone you share data with. In this talk, you'll hear from Eric Martin from Vanta. He's going to talk about the benefits of vendor risk management, how startups typically do this, and how you can set up a process to mitigate risk today. All right, let's get into it.
Hello, my name is Eric Martin. I'm the head of sales over here at Vanta, here to talk to you today about vendor risk management and making sure that your startup is not the back door for the next publicized security breach. Some of you are probably wondering, what is vendor risk management? So simply put, vendor risk management is the practice of doing routine diligence on third-party vendors like AWS, Slack, etc., that you share data with to ensure that those third parties are properly handling that data. When we think about why companies might invest in vendor risk management, there are any combination of kind of reasons here, right? So in some instances, it is to accelerate the growth of your business. Maybe a partner is asking you for kind of proof that you do diligence on your third-party vendors, and you need it in order to secure a deal. Some folks kind of invest in this from a kind of a less of a kind of cost efficiency perspective, but certainly a time efficiency perspective. So in many instances, as you mature, what'll end up happening is you'll establish kind of intake flows for adding new vendors, and the reviewing of vendors can otherwise be kind of very time consuming and arduous. And so companies might invest in kind of vendor risk management tools so that whoever is responsible for assessing the risk of potential new vendors isn't a blocker for their cross-functional peers. They're able to very efficiently say, hey, yes, we are comfortable bringing on this vendor from a risk standpoint, or no, we are not. But really, the reason that people would invest in this is to kind of de-risk their business, right? So even at an early stage, it's probably very unlikely that you all know the full kind of range of third-party apps that your employees are authenticating into and sharing sensitive information with, whether it's employee data, cardholder data, or customer data. So in any case, this is generally why companies might make this investment. When we think about how startups typically do this today, the reality is that most startups don't. Right? If you do anything, then at a minimum, you're fetching a SOC 2 or a SOC 3 report, maybe an ISO 27001 certificate, especially if you, as a startup, are actively SOC 2 compliant. You have to do some of this work. But a lot of the folks that we work with who don't yet have a dedicated security or compliance hire, they do the least amount of work possible, which ends up being kind of fetching a SOC 2 doc, commenting on it that you've read through their kind of controls and their identified risks and communicating that hey, we're comfortable here. Other folks, as they get a little bigger, they might send a custom questionnaire. I know we're all operating in a world where we don't want questionnaires to exist, and I promise that is coming soon. Or what other folks do is they might just kind of store their vendor list in a Google Drive folder per se, where it's just hey, cool, I keep track of my vendors here, and I've uploaded kind of whatever information is available, either from their kind of security webpage, or, if you went out and asked them for a SOC 2, you might store that there as well. In terms of how Vanta thinks about this, I think we think about this through the lens of helping you to answer a couple of questions. So one of the questions we help you kind of answer more kind of confidently is how do you identify all of the critical vendors that your employees are sharing data with? So what we do out of the gates is we actually kind of start by connecting to your email provider, your single sign-on, your MDM, and through those, we can tell you all of the apps that your employees are authenticating into, and not just kind of, where the app is being kind of authenticated in from, but also more pointedly, who are the employees who are, the culprits per se, using these apps that may or may not be kind of on your team's formal radar. Another thing that we do is we help you answer the question of how do you classify vendor risk, and how does it impact your vendor risk program? So for those who are listening, who have a SOC 2 or are pursuing something like SOC 2, you inevitably have a third-party management policy. In that policy, you define kind of, what vendor attributes kind of require you to kind of go due diligence on the vendor before you buy them, and do that diligence annually afterwards. Typically, those definitions only live in your kind of policy. Some folks will have them in a spreadsheet somewhere. Within our new product, we kind of allow you to create a custom vendor risk rubric where you can bring those definitions into Vanta. And as we discover new vendors, we can cross-reference what we know about them with your definitions so that we can more kind of pointedly tell you whether or not one of these discovered apps is high, medium, or low risk. Another question we help you answer is how are you actually performing annual vendor reviews on your critical vendors? I alluded to kind of the folks who are pursuing something like SOC 2, having a third-party management policy. Once again, in those policies, that is where you communicate that like, hey, yes, like vendors who, maybe it's who have access to sensitive data or who have production system access are vendors that we will do diligence on annually. More often than not, companies that are using a tool like Vanta and are pursuing SOC 2, historically, they've only kind of done this annual diligence on their vendors that are quote unquote in scope for their audit. The reality here is that like you're supposed to do this on all vendors that meet your definitions in the policy, not just the ones that are in scope. This new product helps you do that just a lot more efficiently. And really when we hear from folks like what's the hardest part in doing diligence, it's fetching information. So this is where we take advantage of, providing you links to what we call trust centers. These are kind of publicly indexed kind of security pages that will give you the easy button and tell you kind of like what do these vendors or these applications have as it relates to security or compliance. And then lastly, we help you answer the question of like, are you performing quarterly user access reviews on all your critical vendors? Once again, small company. I remember when we were like 6 or 7 people at Vanta, we weren't doing this. We weren't paying too close attention to like which employees had access to which vendors. But as you mature, like this is something that you do want to keep track of, right? Not just from a risk reduction standpoint, but frankly, also a cost reduction standpoint. It's like a lot of these vendors charge you kind of per user per month. And as you kind of scale, inevitably, you're going to have instances where terminated employees like still have access to certain seats, or people have changed departments and they have access to apps that they shouldn't have access to. So what we do is we kind of allow you to kind of see who has access to these systems within the platform itself and action on it. So that like, once again, you can kind of close the door, but you can also save the company some money, contribute to this like, effort that everyone wants to contribute to right now, which is helping the company to be more economically efficient. So in any case, hopefully that all made sense. And hopefully at least some of that resonated with you. If you would like to learn more about kind of how we help startups with this, feel free to shoot me a note, eric@vanta.com. I can also make sure that we let you redeem the 25% discount that we have for launch companies. So in any case, hopefully this was useful. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's a wrap for today's episode. And if you want to see more tactical content, be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. If you want to rate and subscribe, that's great. And if you've got an idea right now and you're inspired to build an MVP or an idea that you want to build into an actual company, just apply to my 12-week course, Founder University, at founder.university/apply. It's free to come to the Founder University if you come to all 12 weeks. And we invest $25,000 in the top graduates to help them grow even more. Again, you can apply for the upcoming cohort, founder.university/apply. And if you would like to give a tactical talk here on this pod, you can submit your presentation at founder.university/submit.